Guys, welcome. Firstly, mazel tov to all of you guys. I think the fact that you hit 200 shirim makes you Navy SEALs. So what I want to do is more than hit the amount of shirim is actually finish the first book. Please God, we're nearly there, and we're getting through the pace well. You guys remember more than you think you do. And how you know it is when you go back to review, it'll all come back to you. It's like listening to an old album. All right, let's get started. So there were a couple of points that we went through yesterday. First point is what are the Gav?
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just grabbing my glasses. Go ahead.
All right. So what I was going to say is there are two discussions. There's this discussion of responsibility during the fall. And what we describe that as is very, very simply is that it also includes the period of time it takes to clean up the debris, because there has to be a reasonable amount of time. If it smashes immediately and somebody fell over a minute, you're not going to be able to collect all the shards in the brush and pan within a half a minute. So that is technically labeled during the fall. After the fall is when you've had sufficient time to clean up the debris, but you have not done so. Okay, now there is a contradiction we said we picked up, or I picked up. In one case, it holds Rabbi Yehuda holds somebody responsible if he stumbles and falls while the object is coming off his shoulder, while he's trying to take it off his shoulder. And in another part, it says that he does not hold the person responsible while he's taking it off his shoulder, but merely if it disintegrates on his shoulder. Okay? So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to show you that discrepancy. I think I might have found the reason for it, but you need to just double check it yourself. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is share the screen. Now, I would like Arthur to read properly.
Okay. Rav Yehuda maintains that one who stumbles is considered negligent, and for this reason he is liable to pay for any resulting damage. Rashi, see Tos Rabbani Peret and Rashba. According to this explanation, the continuation of Rav Yehuda's statement, where he did not have intent, he is not liable, means that he did not intend to take the pitcher down from his shoulder. Rather, it broke by itself while still on his shoulder, and the pieces fell to the ground. In such a case, he is not liable because this is an unavoidable accident.
Right. So what is it implying here? Well read, mate. Very well read. So what's it implying here is that if it just disintegrated on its shoulder because of a manufacturing default, then this is deemed an unavoidable accident. But at the top on point 22, according to Rashi and Tosfot, Rabbeinu Peretz and Rashba, it's saying Rav Yehuda maintains that one who stumbles while taking it off his shoulder is considered negligent and he is liable to pay for any resulting damage. That's note 22 in the Schottenstein 28b3. 28b3. Okay, it's note number 22. Now, this seems to have a discrepancy because when you read a little bit later, okay, and you read 29a1, I'm going to show you the main body of the text, and you guys will tell me if you see a slight problem here. Hopefully you do. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Now, this is the exact next page, guys. Arthur, read it again, this time. The time of the fall.
Yeah. Okay, the time of the fall, they argue as to whether one who stumbles is considered negligent. One master, the Tanna Kamma, maintains that one who stumbles is considered negligent, while the other master, Rav Yehuda, maintains that one who stumbles is not considered negligent.
Right. Now, guys, can you not see the apparent contradiction? What we brought up before, according to Rashba and Rashi on Tosfot, it implies that Rav Yehuda said if he took it off his shoulder and he stumbled at the time when he took it off his shoulder, he is considered negligent and liable. But if it just broke on his shoulder while he wasn't attempting to take it off and he never stumbled, he's not considered negligent. Here he's saying one who stumbles is not considered negligent. Can you see the contradiction on how they're quoting Rav Yehuda within a page of each other? Gavin, Kevin, please let me know.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Kevin, can you see it?
Rav Yehuda disagrees with
disagrees with himself.
Himself? When did he? Okay, I missed
contradicted.
Okay, all right. So this is why I want to just bring it up. The first thing that I brought up with you guys was on 23b3. Okay, and it was note number 22 in the Schottenstein. Okay, and what it said there is Rav Yehuda, if he stumbles, according to Rav Yehuda's opinion, if the owner of the pitcher stumbles and falls again and smashes it against his wall as he's taking it off his shoulder, he is negligent. Fine. Then when we get to 29a1, it said that if he stumbles while he's taking it off his shoulder, he's not negligent, and Rabbi Meir says he is negligent. So this is clearly a contradiction of an interpretation of Rav Yehuda's opinion in both cases. Am I the only one that can see this?
No, I get it.
Mate, do you get it, Art? You're on mute.
No, I'm off mute. I just nodded my head. I get it.
So in 23a, he says there is liability, but now he changes his mind.
In 23b3 on note 20.
I mean b3.
That Rav Yehuda would hold that there is liability for one who stumbles and falls while he's taking it off his shoulder, but if it disintegrates on his shoulder while doing nothing, it's deemed as an unavoidable accident. Right.
Yeah.
Then in 29a1, it says Rabbi Meir holds the person responsible even if it disintegrates on his shoulder, but even if he fell, even if he stumbled while falling, because Rabbi Meir says that that is negligence, he should have looked where he's going. But in that case, in 29a1, it said that Rav Yehuda said it's an unavoidable accident if he fell while he was taking it off his shoulder. So you guys read that, which means it's contradicting Rav Yehuda on both counts. Okay. The only thing I can pick up as to a possible reason is the one quotes, Rabba quotes in the first case, and a buyer is having a conversation with him in the second case. That's the only slight discrepancy I can pick up. Does that make sense?
No, explain that. Sorry.
What about Abaya?
Yeah. Okay, so how did this whole discussion come up? Rabba and Abaya had a discussion with each other in the Gemara. That discussion occurred on 28b3, where it said, Rabba said, Rav Yehuda refers to a case where he intended to take the pitcher down from his shoulder, but he stumbled while doing so and the pitcher smashed against the wall. Then that notice on note 22, where it said, what are the circumstances of a case where he had intent according to Rav Yehuda? In other words, what manner of intent caused the owner of the pitcher to be liable according to Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara offers an explanation by Rabba. He said, well, what would cause him to be liable is Rav Yehuda refers to a case when he intended to take the pitcher down from his shoulder, but he stumbled while doing so and the pitcher smashed against the wall. So Rabba clearly says that Rav Yehuda would hold the person liable in such a case because Rav Yehuda would consider the person negligent. Okay, so it says a difficulty with this interpretation is noted. A buyer who's having this conversation with Rabba says, but if Rav Yehuda holds him liable, if the pitcher broke as he took it from his shoulder, it follows that Rabbi Meir, who rules more stringently than Rav Yehuda in such cases, would hold him liable even if the pitcher disintegrates while still on his shoulder. Rabba responds, in other words, Rabba replies to Abaya, indeed Rav Meir would hold the owner of the pitcher liable even when it disintegrated only in its handle, leaving his handle in his hand. So this is how it works. Okay? Kevin, you've got a Rabba and you've got a Abaya, and they're having a conversation together. Both of them agree with each other that Rabbi Meir, let's get Rabbi Meir clear. They would agree that Rabbi Meir holds one liable in two cases. When he took the pitcher off his shoulder, and as he took it off his shoulder, he stumbled and fell, because according to them, Rabbi Meir is more stringent than other Rabbonim in the generation. And whether or not it was an accident or not, you have to clean up your messes. Or another interpretation of it was that the fact of it is there is negligence if you're falling and you're not watching where you're going. And in that case, as he's taking it off his shoulder, for sure on that basis, Rabbi Meir would hold the person responsible. But because Rabbi Meir is strict, even if there was a manufacturing default and it disintegrated on your shoulder where you only were left with a handle, okay? In other words, there's a strap there and the rest of it fell down, Rabbi Meir would hold people responsible. So that's Abaya and Rabba's opinion with each other. That's the discussion. Okay, that's the first case. Then the Gemara comes and talks about this case and says it doesn't mean that Rabbi Meir is necessarily liable. Why does it say this? Because it brings a case of a woman in a field that got raped and that she's not liable. That's deemed in the Torah as an unavoidable accident. She never put herself in a situation by wearing a tiny bikini. She never chatted up guys. A guy decided to proposition her where it was known as an open field where they couldn't hear her screaming. And basically he threatened to beat her up or maybe forced her or whatever. And that's known as an unavoidable accident. Then the Gemara's discussion in response to that was saying, hang on, maybe the only reason why it's calling it an unavoidable accident is because the only other alternative is if she's complicit. In other words, if she in any way was responsible, she would get the death penalty because she's a betrothed woman, engaged. And therefore, we don't want to put her to death. So if that's the only alternative, maybe it's very lenient on her calling it an unavoidable accident in that case because nobody wants to put her to death. Why would you think so? Is because there's three sins that you have to give up your life rather than commit. But that's B'di Evet, Kevin, meaning after the fact, where she might have been, traumatized, not of sound mind. She might have thought he would have forced himself on her anyway, and she didn't want to be half beaten to death because she couldn't have stopped it. In other words, if she'd have resisted and stopped it, that's one thing. But if she was beaten half in a coma and couldn't have stopped it, then why be beaten half in a coma? You get what I'm saying? So in that particular case, we don't want to put her to death. So then the Gemara proposes initially that maybe we're so lenient for an unavoidable accident in a case where her only alternative is the death penalty, and we wouldn't want to do that to her. But in a case of damages, civil case, the worst of it is the person pays money. So if there's an unavoidable accident and there's a manufacturing default, and what you've done has still caused injury, you'd have to pay for that. Because why is it the other person's fault if you've got if you bought something on special at Macro or Game, and it was made in China, and it lasted 2 minutes, and somebody else was injured by the fact that it disintegrated. Granted, it's not your fault, but it's not their fault either. Does that make sense? So in that particular case, we say maybe there's no such concept as unavoidable accident with regards to civil law and game, because you have to take responsibility. We're not putting anybody to all you're doing is you're paying a fee for damages you caused. And because that alternative is not as severe as this woman in a capital case, maybe we don't deem this case of an unavoidable accident in that case. So then what happens is the Gemara brings a case and says, hang on, listen. The guy goes on his roof. He's got his stone, his knife, his burden. There's a normal wind. That falls off in a normal wind on somebody's roof. They're liable. Why are they liable? Because you've got to take into account that maybe there might be a wind. But if it's within a normal range of wind for that season and you put it in a precarious place, you're responsible for creating a hazard and therefore you have to pay. Rabbi Meir would exclude the case of responsibility, one when one left his jugs to dry on a roof, for example. It's like ceramic jugs, and there was an abnormal tornado, and that took the jug down. So why is it bringing this case? Is it's proving that Rabbi Meir doesn't hold somebody accountable for a case of an unavoidable accident. That's why it brings this case in the Gemara of the jugs with the tornado, abnormal wind, to show that even certain cases, Rabbi Meir says the person is not responsible. So therefore, we're saying that we don't necessarily agree with Rabbah and Abaye, and therefore Rabbah's contention is disproved. So as Abaye, that Rabbi Meir would hold a person necessarily responsible if it just disintegrated from a manufacturing default. But one thing is for sure, that if while taking it off his shoulder, it disintegrated not from a manufacturing default, but because the guy was clumsy and he fell. That's not, according to Rabbi Meir, an unavoidable accident, because the guy should have looked where he's going. When you're taking something off your shoulder, you don't walk, take it off your shoulder, and whatever, and then you come to slip and smash against the wall. You be presence of mind. You look where you're going. You gently take it off, etc. And therefore, I'll tell you right now, Kev, Rabbi Meir would hold the person responsible as he's taking it off his shoulder. But the first case implies by Rabbah that, I'm coming, Kev, implies that he's responsible, according to Rabbi Yehuda would call him responsible if he stumbled and fell while he took it off his shoulder. Then in the Gemara where it says there's an argument between the two Tanoim, there's Rabbi Meir, who's known as the anonymous opinion, the Tana Kamma, we'll come to see it's Rabbi Meir, who says that, listen, if you take it off your shoulder and you trip while you're taking it off your shoulder, you're liable. But according to Rav Yehuda, that's an unavoidable accident and you're not liable. It seems that either Abaye disagrees with Rabbah, which I don't think so, because those two seemed agreement with the argument, but the Gemara disagreed with their opinion on Rav Meir's accountability. So therefore, it might be that the Gemara in general holds Rav Meir would hold the person responsible for the stumbling as he took it off his shoulder, and the Gemara might agree that Rabbi Yehuda holds the person not liable in a case where he took it off his shoulder and stumbled. It was only a suggestion by Rabbah and Abaye as to what Rabbi Yehuda would deem liability or culpability for taking it off his shoulder. It was just Rabbah's suggestion, not that it's just Rabbah. Rabbah's great, and so is Abaye. It just means that the Gemara might have other opinions, because here it's coming to say, according to Rav Yehuda, it's an unavoidable accident if he stumbles and falls as he's taking it off his shoulder. According to Rabbi Meir, he should have looked where he's going, and therefore he is liable. Okay, so that's what we know. Kev, what's your question?
Common sense. At the end of the day, even if you don't realize if you realize your object broke, then you clean up after yourself, because someone's going to get hurt. That's the bottom line.
Okay, but this is at the time of the fall. It's an excellent point Kevin's making. And that's why the Gemara sees Kevin's point exactly, or Kevin sees the Gemara's point, in that there are two distinct arguments here, guys. There's one before the fall and after the fall. So here we're discussing the argument. Just one sec, Kev. This is the argument not after the fall, about whether you declare your object that broke in the public domain ownerless or your responsibility. That's a separate argument. The first discussion I want to have is during the fall, which means at the time of the fall or allowing you sufficient time to clean it up. That's deemed before the fall. After the fall is when you've had sufficient time to clean it up and you failed to do so. That's a separate argument. So this is an argument purely before the fall or during the fall. It's two distinct arguments. Does that make sense?
In real time. It's like in split second. It's
in real time. So the real time is A, when it's falling. And one is that you're running around to get a brush and a pan and somebody damages themselves. Now that is not considered after the fall, because the Gemara is fair to the person that had the pitch on his shoulder and says, listen, you're not Superman here, or you're not Flash Gordon. You can't do it in 0.1 seconds. So we're giving you a certain time to reasonably clean it up. if in that time, I mean, we learned a case of a wall that was slowly falling over, and the Sanhedrin or the Beis Din said to the person, listen, everybody's complaining, your wall's leaning over, you've got 5 days. 5 days, get it right. If it injures in those 5 days, you're not responsible because you've got 5 days, a grace period in which to get it right. If it fell after that period and it injured, you are responsible. So it's known as the grace period to allow you sufficient time to clean it up. But that's still in the category of during the fall because you can't stop it. After the fall is deemed at a point where you could have cleaned it up, is it your responsibility or not? That's a different discussion. So far, I hope I've explained the Gemara well.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Thank you.
the guy that had it in his shoulder, he was the owner of it. Bottom line. Ownership. His ownership is an important factor anyway.
He was the owner of it, bottom line. But the point of it is what we try and do is we try and be fair. So what we said is, listen, I don't care if you bought it from China and it's not your fault. You damaged me. Why must I be responsible because you bought it from China instead of an American product? Let's keep it not political. I think we could be shut down over such little comments. All 5 of us that are watching. I mean, please. So the thing of it is that we're saying that, listen, it might not be your fault that it caused damage, but why should the other person be a victim also? But we're saying to the other person, why should that person be a victim? Because he wasn't complicit in it. He never caused it. Hang on, he never caused it. So what we're trying to do is be fair to both parties. Now, the law evolves. When does it evolve? I read these 50 top economic inventions. One of them, the biggest, is insurance. Why insurance? Because you have a case like this where the person wasn't negligent because it was a manufacturing default, but the person got injured, and why should he suck up the expense for a manufacturing default that somebody else bought a cheap product or didn't buy a cheap product, whatever. So insurance is there to make sure that both parties for a monthly premium get sorted out so it doesn't end up impoverishing the person who owns the pitcher. Why? Because maybe the pitcher was 50 shekels and he left shards and it ended up crippling a 300 zuz horse. I don't know. So that's where insurance was. But in the old days, insurance looked at culpability. You know, in the police report, you have to say what your version of the accident is. Is it your version, or is the other person to blame, or you? And then the 2 insurance companies get together and they negotiate. You know, who caused the damage. But in South Africa, it's changed in the last few years. Why has it changed? Because people drive so badly that they no longer care whose fault it is. You can smash your own car in an accident and they'll still pay you out. But that's in South Africa. I don't know if it's like that in a normal first world country. Okay. So, guys,
just one quick comment for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So can you relate time oxide damages for the first time to the guy whose pitcher is just smashed? They're being reasonable. Is there a link there?
Question, guys. I think Kevin asked an excellent question because he said, why isn't the guy given another opportunity because it was an accident? So this is the fact. It says a man is more. We learned this 2 dafs ago. It says a man is always muad whether he's sleeping or awake. Meaning, even if he's sleeping and he's not conscious, and it was unconscious, and he never meant to do it, and he can't control himself in his sleep, he is liable. Why? Because he should have removed the hazard. So here you're saying, but there wasn't anything he could have done to preempt it. But even though he couldn't do anything, it says that man's got a deeper level of dias, intelligence, and therefore you're responsible. Let's take a case of an ox. If an ox hits a person, you pay for actual damage. If a person hits a person, you're liable for actual damage and 4 other things: pain, humiliation, convalescence, and medical bills, which shows that a human being is more responsible and always liable for damage if he injures another human being. Okay.
But going to that case.
Yeah.
So as it's breaking, as it's disintegrating, they need to give him time to clean it up. And if someone unfortunately gets injured within that time frame, to me it's you can compare it to the tam ox, where they're going to have lenience or not.
Guys, the reason I don't want to compare it to a tam ox is because where's Gavin now?
He went. Should I phone him?
No, I'm sure he knows he's disappeared. It can't be a chidush. The reason I don't want you to compare it is because they're completely different categories of damage. Firstly, with the tam ox, you must know that wasn't.
Yeah.
Number one is that ox's nature isn't prone to damage from inception like a pit. That's the first thing. This is a case of pit. We learn.
Yes.
That's the first thing. And the whole reason it's not prone to damage from inception is otherwise you'd be muad. Every other damager is muad except for tam. So you cannot compare an ox to any other damager which is muad from the onset, including mankind that caused it, or the pit that he created, which is prone to damage from inception. So that's number one.
Which the shards are.
Yeah. Number two, It's not a case where you keep giving the guy another chance, because if somebody leaves something in the road and is prone to damage from inception, and it was accidental, he didn't mean to give, it fell out of his backpack. And it fell out of his backpack, and it was a piece of Lego from his child's play set, and some 300-pound guy was running and ended up being mangled on the concrete below. Okay? So he didn't mean it, but why should you give him a second chance? I mean, you have to pay for the RCU bills. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how's it this guy's fault? It's not his fault. So it's different.
It's like these. I got an example, good example. Can I just, sorry for me dominating here. Doesn't happen often. But Arthur, when you see these corky nets, people rent these electric scooters and they put it up against a wall afterwards when they finish their ride. Then the thing falls down. Let's say that after they've long gone, they're too lazy to put it against a wall, because it sometimes falls and someone can come and trip over it and damage themselves. So that would be a similar case.
No, it wouldn't, because there's not Gemara after the fall is that there's a difference between negligence that's caused as a result of not giving a continental hoo-ha if somebody got damaged, and something that was considered an unavoidable accident. They are going to distinguish your case about just gross which is what Kevin's saying. You're not allowed to do that.
They put it like lying. They put it. They don't. They leave it standing, but they don't. It's not secure, and eventually it's going to fall over, and someone will trip over it and injure themselves.
Exactly, Gab.
So like you said, the case on the roof, where the guy leaves something on the roof, implements. They're going to get blown off with a strong wind. They shouldn't put it there in the first place.
Okay, so that's where the Gemara distinguishes. If it's a normal wind, you can be expected to assume that there will be a normal pickup. But if it's a gale force wind where you've stuck it in the middle of your roof, it's safe, but a tornado hits Oklahoma and your roof comes with the jug, it's not your fault. That's an
sure. Yeah, that's a
all right.
Act of nature.
What I want you to do, Kevin, is you've had some great questions. I want you to teach us Torah now, and then we're going to cover the next part tomorrow. I hope today it's been helpful for you guys.
Shkach, thank you, Damon. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Sorry, I missed the last couple of minutes. I was on my phone, and it was on charge, and it still died.
No problem.
So I had to set if you want clarification, Damon will pitch in for you later if you want.
Okay, but now whose opinion is it now?
Damon, Gavin, did you get that one?
Well, it's not this ox's opinion, I can tell you that.
Cheers, okay, here we go. It's a negative commandment not to turn a blind eye to the lost object of a Jew, to leave it. Okay. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray, and hide yourself from them. You may not hide yourself. And this is from Devarim. Okay, so If it's obviously got markings on it, if you know that this oak's got an ox with like a brown speck here and a white speck on its chest, if it's heavy, then I think that would be the case. If you know for sure, you can't just be, because we wouldn't like it if it happened to us. If someone saw our object and said, why should I care? It doesn't belong to me. Be selfish about things. I think it goes back to not being selfish. I mean, it's easy for me to say these things, but okay. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's a negative commandment not to leave the animal of a Jew lying crouched under its load and go off on its way without helping him to unload the animal. If it's a bit heavy, if its burden is too heavy. So it says here, you shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen down by the way and hide yourself from them. Okay. It's just being compassionate and just being empathetic and just seeing things and not having tunnel vision and seeing the broad big picture and just noticing what's happening around us. So especially if it's our brothers.
So there's a famous story of a rabbi, in this particular, I don't know who the rabbi is, Damon might know, or Arthur, or yourself even. What happened was a guy came up to him with a donkey and a cart, and he was struck. No, you know that story, Damon?
Yeah, someone who hated his brother. They were big rivals, and he's still supposed to help him. That's what you're saying.
Different. I can't remember. It's fine. Carry on.
Yeah. Okay, then another one. Okay, now changing subject here. It's a negative commandment not to fail to keep a vow. It says when man vows a vow, he shall not break his word. So basically, okay, so we use the term bali neder. I'm sure you've heard of it, Arthur and Gavin. I use it. It means rather say what I do. If you say, I'll definitely do something for you, then you have to do it. Just say, I will try. I use the word try. I will try my best. I will try, because you're covering yourself. Because if you say, I will do it for you tomorrow, and you don't do it, you've actually made a vow. And I know we all do it, and sometimes we're not conscious that it's actually it's a bad thing, because words are powerful. And Damon, just correct me if I'm not saying it correctly.
I'm happy.
I'm not expressing it like it should be. So you say something, you keep your word. That's like a business. People like certain companies have a good reputation and promise and deliver on their word, and don't are not. They're ethical. They're honest. If they keep to their word and they do what they say they're going to do, then that's why they get repeat business, and they have long-term relationships with their clients and customers, because people like honesty. And so to keep your words very important. So just say I'll try my best, or bali neder, to say to a from person. Don't say to a non-from person, may not know it. Say I'll try my best. I'll do what I can. Things like that. Don't say, yes, I'll do it tomorrow. You don't do it tomorrow, they're not going to exactly be charmed with you. And then they may not trust us in the future for work. I've forgotten things in the past. I try my best not to. But use the word I'll try, or I'll do my best. I'll give it I'll try my utmost. Don't say I will definitely. Say definitely. Maybe it's not such a wise thing to use that word all the time.